The New York Mets are on the verge of elimination after a rough game four. We'll talk about what was a tough night on this late live edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Sincerely appreciate everyone who is tuning into this live stream, the diehards that watched every pitch of that game. Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. I appreciate you all. I'm just surprised we have anyone in here right now. This was rough. This was rough. I don't even know if it's worth it to break down this game in its entirety, but man, you know what? Here's what I'll say about where the Mets are at right now, because it's about over, obviously, right? One loss away. But here's what I'll say about this team before we talk about the game, right? Because we can get into the strategy, we can get into all these things. I still just appreciate like the individual moments of this game. Brandon Nimmo on a messed up foot, running faster than anyone did in this game to get down the line and somehow beating on double play to get one measly run on the board for the New York Mets. I appreciate seeing these guys every inning getting something started. Never really resulted in anything, right? They scored 2 runs, but every inning, guys were getting hits. Guys weren't giving away at bats. That was good to see. Even you see, like, you push Danny Young. I'm trying to see the pitch count. 49 pitches, just so you don't have to use another arm, because the Mets did decide to go short in their bullpen for this series so that they could have Acuna on this team, which we haven't even seen him yet. So that was probably a mistake. Not that it matters. It would have been nice to have another arm to just throw out there. So Danny Young throws almost 50 pitches. That guy's arm is probably shot. Yeah, man, it was a rough night, and just it's so disheartening, right? Because the Mets riding so high, and you think, oh man, if they could beat the Brewers the way they did, if they can just beat down the Phillies, is anyone going to stand in their way? And at the time when it was Dodgers-Padres, I think we all thought, it doesn't really matter which one of these teams are in it. The Mets can beat anybody. They can beat anybody at home. And I think what we've seen right now is the Dodgers have just gotten their acts together in a way that I don't know if anyone really saw coming. I feel like, I mean, yes, that's overstating it. Obviously, they've been good all year, but like they have hit their gear right now. And you know, it's tough to see, right? Because you obviously can watch on full display the talent disparity when they got Shohei Ohtani, who you're scared to pitch to, and then, all right, well, I guess you got to pitch to Mookie Betts, and Mookie Betts goes 4 for 6 with 4 runs driven in, scored 3, homer, just did everything for them. You know, Tommy Edman bats cleanup. You think, okay, well, maybe that's a soft underbelly of their lineup. He's a guy that you at least feel like you can pitch to because he might not drive it out of the yard. Well, he comes through some huge hits in this game. So it was just, it's rough, man. It's a really rough set of games to try to swallow as a Mets fan. And now you're going to try to talk yourself into a Game 5 victory. And I still believe that this team can find their way to at least extend this series. But do you think this team can really win 3 in a row against that Dodgers squad? They're going to have to really drastically change the momentum in this series. And I'll allow myself to try to speak an optimistic version of this series on tomorrow's edition of the show, but we can't do it on this live stream reaction. It's just brutal. And, you know, as much as you want to talk about the strategy of this series, right? I spent a lot of time on why I felt like the Mets made a mistake not going to Sean Manaea in game 1. This was before the series started, and everyone was talking about it. And then I said, all right, well, you have Manaea for, against the bullpen game 2. They won that. That made sense. Now, of course, you can second guess, say, well, at least you would have got Manaea for 2 games in this series, but maybe if you start Manaea game 1, maybe the Mets get swept. Maybe they don't win game 1. They still lose the Sevy start, the Quintana start, and they just get swept out of the building if Kodai Senga started game 4. But the whole kind of basis of my argument on where the Mets might have gone wrong going into this series as far as how they lined up their pitching was to get Jose Quintana 2 starts. But maybe the Mets front office knew something that I guess I didn't, or I didn't take into account, which was just how tough of a matchup this would be for Jose Quintana. And we saw it in this game. I mean, I don't think that Quintana necessarily was significantly worse than he has been lately. Like, I think he came in with a similar game plan to the way he has pitched, but the Dodgers were just disciplined. And there is not a single guy on that team that gave him anything, that chased at all. And so it just was a really tough night for him, where he put you in a little bit of a hole and put you against the 8 ball because they got to pull him in the 4th inning. Before that, if you want to go through a full game recap, 1st inning, Ohtani and Mark Vientos trade homers. No one scores in the 2nd. 3rd inning, Quintana walks to Shohei Ohtani with 1 out. Mookie Betts gets a base hit. Quintana gets a big strikeout, nearly wiggles out of the jam. And I mentioned Tommy Edman. Can't get him out. Edman rows a double. And that was one of the biggest hits of the game, because if Quintana can get out of that jam, who knows what happens. He actually does get out of worse damage. Edman had an RBI double, Kike Hernandez with a base hit, so a couple runs score there. But Max Muncy draws a walk to load the bases. Quintana wiggles out of that one. 4th inning, gives up a single to Chris Taylor, which you can't do because you just got to get Chris Taylor out when there's these other hitters in this Dodgers lineup. Walks Shohei Ohtani, he gets pulled. Jose Butto comes on to face Mookie Betts, gives up a double, 2 more score. That closed the book on Quintana. It was 3 1/3, 5 hits, 5 earned, 4 walks, 2 strikeouts. And yeah, you were just kind of behind it from that point on. Butto put up a 0 in the 5th. Got a fly out in the 6th for his 6th out. Walks Ohtani. Phil Maton comes on to face Betts, gives up a 2-run homer. At that point, 7-2. And again, the Mets pretty much just could not cash in on a lot of opportunities they did have. Like, if you want to get to an optimistic approach, the Mets did get into double digits on hits in this game, and they had their opportunities. 3rd inning, you load the bases, and that was obviously a big missed chance. Francisco Alvarez with a leadoff hit. Lindor got a hit after that. Mark Vientos struck out. Alonso draws a walk to load the bases. We talked about Nimmo showing that grit to get down the line to beat out the double play, but for a guy that got a couple hits in this game, that was the time where they really needed a hit, not just a ground ball and beating out a double play. Ends up not being a sustainable rally, right? That's the 2nd out. Marte gets out behind him, so you had an opportunity with the bases loaded. Only 1 run comes in. 6th inning, bottom of the 6th, Nimmo gets a leadoff hit. Starling Marte gets a hit after that. JD Martinez draws a walk to load the bases. That was the Mets' real chance, right? And in the next segment, I want to talk about why we really shouldn't mention strategy too much. But with that said, there was some strategy that came into play in that inning. Jose Iglesias comes up, right on right matchup. They wait to go to Jeff McNeil. They pinch hit McNeil for Bader. I think it would have made sense to have McNeil hit for Iglesias instead and kind of see what happens, right? Maybe the Dodgers go to Banda to face McNeil. And I like McNeil versus Banda more than seeing Iglesias go up against Evan Phillips at that point. Regardless, Iglesias strikes out. McNeil comes on to pinch hit. He flies out. You can't really risk trying to score there and just get 1 more run across. They were talking about Nimmo being hurt. That's why he didn't tag up to score. I think it was just, look, you need 5 runs at that point. You don't need 1. So he stays on. You bring in Jesse Winker for a chance. They go to the bullpen. They get Blake Trinan. And Jesse Winker, who's been absent the last couple games, gives the fans their one moment where everyone got excited because he put a charge in one, but it ends up falling well short of the fence. I mean, I don't even think it got to the warning track. It looked good off the bat, but that was really it. That was the last moment where the Mets felt like they had a shot. Although I will say, I guess the next inning, Lindor did lead things off when it was still 7-2 with the base hit. Vientos nearly hits into a double play ball. Bad throw allows him to reach. And then after Alonso struck out, Nimmo got a base hit. So again, I'd like the grit for some of these guys. They had runners at 1st and 3rd with the chance to maybe eat into that lead. Didn't happen. Ultimately, through 7, the Mets were 0 for 7 with runners in scoring position. And I don't even know if it ended up being 0 for 8 or 0 for 9 for the last couple innings. I guess it might have been. But regardless, the Dodgers through the first 8 were 6 for 15 with runners in scoring position. They got the big hits. The Mets did not. And that's the story of the game for the New York Mets. So now we're getting dangerously close to the season ending. And I think there's been a ton of talk the last couple of days about the strategy of the series, right? Have the Mets lost this because of strategy? And that's what I want to close the show talking about. We're just doing 2 segments. I'll have a full show for you tomorrow after I process all of the different Carlos Mendoza talking to the media. Dave Roberts, we'll see what they're doing. I don't know if they're going to go Jack Flaherty or they're going to save them for the World Series and go to a bullpen game because maybe they don't need him, or maybe their thought is the Mets might give us our best punch in Game 5, save Flaherty so you can combat Sean and I Game 6. We'll save all of that for tomorrow. I just want to talk about whether this has been a strategical miscalculation by the Mets that's put them in this position, or if spoiler, I really think it's going on here, which is just the Dodgers are simply better than the New York Mets. We'll talk about it all in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Get in on daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks, the best way to win real money this football season. Download the Prize Picks app. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports. You can check out Locked On Sports Today, which is streaming 24/7 on YouTube. And if you're watching right now, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate all of you who are tuning in. It's tough for me to scroll through all the comments, but do me a favor, since you guys are here watching, I will answer any questions that I can find here. So if you got some questions, throw them in the comments right now, and I'll try to get to some of them. But here's what I want to say right now. As much as you could talk about why is Iglesias in the lineup instead of McNeil, right? That's not going to make the difference in what this series has been. Okay, the Dodgers have utterly dismantled the New York Mets up to this point. Oh, man, this brings me back, Tim Frith. All of these longtime listeners know Tim likes to throw some crazy trades out there. I can't answer a Vladimir Guerrero trade question right now, but I just had to throw it on the screen. Thank you, Tim. Look, the Dodgers are just simply a better baseball team than the New York Mets. They have more talent. And I think the biggest difference in this series, quite honestly, has been their starting pitching. Because what I didn't envision coming in is that Walker Buehler and Yoshinobu Yamamoto would look as good as they have in these last 2 games. So, to me, that's the bigger thing, is the starting pitching of the Dodgers has just been better than we could have expected. And I think that's why the Mets have struggled in this matchup more than I thought, because I thought they'd be able to jump on Walker Buehler and then they'd be up 2-1. And I did think that this was going to be a tougher matchup with Yoshinobu Yamamoto against Jose Quintana. I really thought the Mets had the edge with Sevy on the hill. And I was envisioning Luis Severino giving the Mets, 6 innings, 2 runs. Maybe the Mets put 5 on Buehler. And that just didn't happen. So it's a credit to Walker Buehler. We got a good question here. Why does everyone think Cohen doesn't want to spend? A lot of guys didn't want to sign here. 100%. Look, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the guy that pitched tonight, the Mets did everything they could to sign him. And he didn't want to sign. He wanted to go play with the Dodgers. And look, the Mets still have the highest payroll in baseball. That's based on the spending they did to get to this point. The Mets are going to spend like crazy this offseason because they got this close. I'm sure a lot of that's going to be retaining these guys. We'll see what happens with Pete Alonso. We'll see what happens with all these pitchers. Are they going to sign Quintana? Are they going to sign Minaya, Severino, all those guys? We'll see. But what I think happens here, and this is a really good question we got here too. Do you think getting the NLCS will entice more marquee players to sign with the Mets going forward? I think a subplot that we'll be talking about if the Mets get eliminated and the Dodgers face the Yankees in the World Series, is wanting to see the Dodgers beat the Yankees. And I will spend multiple shows making the case why the New York Mets are a more attractive free agent landing spot for Juan Soto than the Yankees. You want to play second fiddle to Aaron Judge for the rest of your career, or do you want to be the man with Francisco Lindor next to you in New York still and be a chance to be the guy that gets the Mets just their third World Series ever instead of just hang another banner on top of all the ones they have with the Yankees? I think you can make it the case that the Mets are a team that has a better long-term outlook than the Yankees because of Steve Cohen compared to the Steinbrenners not being what they used to be. I think the fact that this season was so much fun, I really do believe this is going to help the Mets in free agency. And there's one guy that we're going to be talking about above all else, and that's Juan Soto. And I think the Mets this year have done a great job to put themselves in the perfect position where if all things are, I wouldn't say equal because then he might sound the Yankees, but if the Mets are, submitting an offer that's $50 million more than the New York Yankees, or even better, let's just say the Yankees come at Soto with an 11-year deal for whatever AAV, and the Mets put 13 in front of him or 14 in front of him. I think the Mets can sign Juan Soto, and all of a sudden you take this team, you add Soto to it, and it's a completely different equation. Not that it's just you have to get Juan Soto. The Mets could run it back with Pete Alonso, and I think they'll be fine. I think that this team has a lot to build on moving forward. But this run was amazing for the Mets in so many ways. And let's not just forget about how awesome this run has been. Like, as frustrating as it is to watch the Dodgers just crush the Mets in this series, let's not forget how amazing it was to beat the Phillies at home and clinch an NLCS. I don't know, was that a week ago? I mean, feels like it was a lot longer ago than that, but that wasn't that far in a rearview mirror. Once you get away from this series and you can sit back and reflect on what this run was, you're going to remember that Lindor home run to clinch a playoff berth. You're going to remember Pete Alonso's huge home run to allow this, because the Mets could have gone out with a whimper, right? They could have lost to the Brewers and it would have been just like 2022. Great season, ends in the wild card round. And we got so much more than that. All of these games, even the Mets won an NLCS game. Sean Manaea delivered, the Mets scored a bunch of runs. And I don't think that this series is necessarily over, right? Like, I still think there's a chance that the Mets can show some pride, because we saw it, right? We saw it throughout this game, them still having a chance. And they didn't get the job done, but I still think they can find their way to winning a game 5. And then you got Sean Manaea in game 6. And again, I don't think the Mets are going to win 3 in a row, but can they still put a little bit of fright into the Dodgers? I think so. Got another question here. Did the Dodgers crush us, or did the Mets crush the Mets? It felt like 3 walks per inning. That is true. I mean, the Mets pitching has been brutal in this series. You can't overlook that. How many walks was it in this game when it was all said and done? It was 9 walks. Set some record, right, for the most walks through 4 games. That's been an issue. And I think the Mets' lack of pitching has shown in this series because of how disciplined the Dodgers have been. You look at Jose Quintana, and I was feeling like the Mets had a shot. I really did, just because he had been so good. But then you watch the Dodgers approach, and the Dodgers could have beat themselves. And they didn't. The Dodgers were so disciplined in this game, and that's why they won it. If they were chasing a little bit, if Tommy Edman doesn't hit that double, maybe you get one more inning out of Quintana. Maybe things are different, but you can woulda, coulda, should have it all you want to. Really doesn't matter here. The Dodgers are playing great baseball, and the Mets have run into a buzzsaw these last couple games. A team that is so talented, and yeah, it's just it's been a little bit of a nightmare. Now, Kodai Senga gonna show up for game 5. I mean, we'll see what happens with all that. We'll see what happens in this game 5. I love nothing more, though, for the Mets to just win one more. Show a little bit of fight, show a little bit of heart, and find a way to win a game. It's going to be some combination of Kodai Senga and David Peterson. Don't know how they're going to plan on deploying that. My assumption would still be Kodai Senga, but you didn't pitch Peterson. So maybe you go and you start with David Peterson and see how deep he gets you. It's just that top of the lineup, when you have to go through Ohtani and Betts, and that's not even mentioning Freddie Freeman, who didn't even play in this game. It's tough. And also, I mean, look, Max Muncy has been unbelievable in this series. That guy is so locked in. And, it's when you have the Max Muncies of the world who are still a really good player, but a guy that you have to pitch to for this Dodgers lineup, and he's just not helping you at all, right? He's not. So, it's hard to see the Mets coming back from this thing. I think this is fair. It's over. It feels like this is the end of the run for the New York Mets, but there's still a game left. There's still one more. And I'll have another show for you guys tomorrow morning as we will sort of process everything. I'm going to sit back here, watch all the different media availabilities, see what Dave Roberts has to say, see what Carlos Mendoza has to say, see what the strategy is going to be. Okay, hold on. I got to put this comment up. Let's face it, the Mets came this far with a bunch of low-tier free agents signed by mini market Stearns. Can we stop with the mini market thing? Like, that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And fine, you want to feel that way, feel that way. David Stearns, in his first year as the Mets president of baseball operations, made shrewd move after shrewd move, and it got the Mets 7 wins away from a World Series at the NLCS for the first time since 2015. You think if Billy Epler was the president of Billy Epler spent Steve Cohen's money like crazy. Where did that get the Mets? Where did it? I mean, really? Yeah, they had a great season in 2022, but still, for the Mets to have gotten where they got this year, and for anyone to have anything bad to say about David Stearns, Steve Cohen, even Carlos Mendoza, with whatever decisions you can have your gripes with. This is something that I meant to talk about at the beginning of the segment, but we're answering some comments. I always feel like fans are so quick to criticize the manager. And I've said this on my show before. I've been doing this since 2019. And if you go back and listen to 2019, every single show was playing that game. Mickey Callaway should have done X, Y, and Z. I did that for a whole year until I realized, why am I doing this? Because ultimately the players are the ones that win or lose the game. And yes, sometimes you do have to harp on a really bad managerial decision. But I think the reason why fans jump on the manager is because you can't see yourself stepping into JD Martinez's shoes and actually getting that hit when there's runners in scoring position, because of course we couldn't. We're fans. We can't step into a major league batter's box, but you can step into the mind of a big league manager and say, what a dumb move. So I feel like it's always the fans' first reaction to jump on the manager. Carlos Mendoza did not lose this series for the New York Mets. I know Jesse Winker didn't play the last 2 games. And yeah, there's some things I would have done differently. But the way the Mets have lost the 3 games that they've lost, to think that it's Mendoza's fault more than it's the Mets haven't been able to pitch in this series. The Dodgers have had a button-up approach and have been great. Every single guy, basically, 1 through 9, has been giving them quality at-bats. They got more out of Walker Buehler and Yoshinobu Yamamoto than they have pretty much all season. Yamamoto was good before he went down, but they haven't had him since June. He was great in this one. I mean, great, probably an overstatement, but definitely good and definitely had good stuff. Buehler, best he's been since he got hurt with Tommy John. And then their bullpen continues to be lights out. The Dodgers are winning this series more than the Mets are losing it. And I get the emotional reaction from fans. I get it. But come on now. Come on. Tomorrow's show, I will try one last time to give you an optimistic angle on why the Mets can win Game 5. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves and say, oh, this is the team of destiny that's going to do the impossible and battle back from down 3-1. We'll start to have that conversation with each victory, but it's one game. And I do think the New York Mets had opportunities that they didn't capitalize on here, and they are going to be playing their backs against the wall, and I will not count out this team with their backs against the wall. This has been a season where the New York Mets have come back, as David West points out here. The whole narrative of the year, the comeback kids, absolutely. It's been about coming back. So I'm not going to doubt them until the final out, until the season's over, right? So we'll see what happens. Like I said, same time every day. I'll have a 6 o'clock in the morning show that'll go up on YouTube. It'll be live on your podcast feed probably before that. We'll talk about the strategy of the game. What can the Mets do? Potentially the last bit of baseball we're going to watch until February. So let's all lock in. Let's be excited that we still have some baseball to watch. And let's believe that this team can show some pride in front of their home fans. We're all going to get eased into the game by the Temptations. We're going to sing the national anthem and give us that serenade of My Girl. And hopefully Francisco Lindor can build off of that, hit a home run in the bottom of the first inning. Maybe Kodai Senga's great. Maybe David Peterson's great. Maybe they're both great. Maybe the Mets win the game. And then we all get to think about a Sean Manaea Game 6. But for now, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. I sincerely appreciate all of you that tuned into this live stream. Was not expecting to get anything more than 4 or 5 viewers on this one. I thought everyone would just be going to bed. But I appreciate all of you that tuned in. I'll have another show for you guys tomorrow morning. Thank you all. And let's go Mets, right? Come on. Have a little bit of faith that they're going to win Game 5. Not that they're going to win the series, that they just might win Game 5 and give us one more memorable night. We'll see what happens. Thank you all.